Hello, and welcome back to Black River Paranormal Investigations. I'm your host, Rich Hardway. So, in all my previous videos, up to episode 7, I've kind of brought you through the later part of the 70s through the 80s. And now, going to start the 1990s. The 1990s was a slower decade for me, especially in the early half. I just don't think I was paying attention or I was just ignoring or something. But I'd had a daughter born. Uh, I just got my first house. It's 1989, rolling into 90. It's like September of 89. And I'm more focused on raising my daughter, getting this house, taking care of this house once I have it, and my career in the early part of the 90s. In the second half of the 90s, I had divorced. I had filed for divorce. I actually filed in 96, but it took till 99 to go through. And I started picking up a little bit more after that, after I filed for my divorce and stuff. I started noticing things. So this video is about a time frame. I think it's 91. It could be 90, but it might be 91. I worked for a company in East Cleveland in the Collinwood district, and I lived 75 miles away in LaGrange. But it was a great company, and I stayed there for a few years because the way the owner treated you. He was just a phenomenal person. Uh, he liked to have employee, what's the word I'm looking for? He liked to do things besides work with the employees. He liked to take a day a month and have a cookout at the shop or beach day, or we would go and experience something in Cleveland. He took us one time on a trolley tour. We toured Cleveland on Lolly the Trolley. We went to various buildings and different things, and it was about trying to make the employees of the factory, well, not really a factory, it was a shop, but trying to make the shop employees bond a little bit, if you will, and have a better relationship personally, maybe, that would possibly reflect onto your job performance. Uh, so this particular time, he took us to the USS Cod, which is a World War II submarine, docked in Cleveland, Ohio, as a museum ship. And they've gone through and they've tried to put products in it that would have been in it, like real shaving kits and letters from former sailors and the proper cookware and food that was in their pantry. And they've worked so hard. They got the engines running again. Unfortunately, there's no propellers on the Cod, so it can't push itself through the water. But they do run again. After like 40 some years of not running, the engines run again. Anyway, so we go, there's about 23 of us in the shop, and we go as a group to the Cod and explore the Cod. And so down the hatch you go, and you're in the forward torpedo room, and then there's the first engine room, second engine room. You get back and you're in the kitchen area where they would have socialized and eaten, and then you get into where the captain's quarters were and all this stuff. Well, I think I got the terminology right. We actually started in what they call the aft torpedo room. We went down the hatch, and that's where we're at, and that's where the torpedo launchers that would be in the back of the Cod fire out. And there's sleeping quarters. You sleep above the torpedoes, and there's like torpedoes in there, and then from there you go through, and there's a little officers area, and then the kitchen, and then you get into the first engine room, and then there's a second engine room, and then you're in the forward torpedo room. Excuse me. Well, somewhere in that second engine room before you reach the forward torpedo area. I'm going through there, and at the time I believe there was three of us. We were kind of in a group because we went through there in small individual groups. The Cod's kind of small, so you all can't be in the same room at the same time. So it was me, a guy named Rick Gillenwater, and another guy named Milton, and we're going through the second engine room, or maybe I'm going backwards. Maybe it's first engine room. And in all these different rooms, they have like a push button recording. You push it, and it plays over a speaker, and it tells you about the room and what the people did in here and stuff like that. So anyway, we're in this engine room, headed for the forward torpedo room, when out of the corner of my eye, I see a guy behind one of the engines. And he is actually wearing the correct period uniform that a USS Cod a sailor would have worn. So when I turn my head to look at him straight on, he's not there. There's nobody there. And I'm thinking, well, maybe he went down or he stepped around, went out the back way or something. So we continued on our tour. I asked Rick, I said, hey, did you see that guy over there? And he said, no, he didn't see anybody. So we go through the forward torpedo room, and we come back up, and we're on the deck of the ship outside, and, taking a look at the deck guns and stuff that's up there, which they do still shoot the deck gun off, which is pretty impressive. Anyway, there was a couple of volunteers up there, and I noticed all the volunteers, they weren't wearing sailor period correct clothing there. So I go up to two guys, they're standing there talking, and I went up to them and I ask, who was the guy downstairs in the engine room that was wearing the uniform, the World War II sailor uniform? And they both looked at each other, and they looked back at me. They kind of laughed, looked back at me, and they said, oh, you've just seen our residential spirit, who still watches over and protects the Cod. They didn't give me a name of who they thought this was or anything like that. But later on, while doing some research about the Cod, it's kind of sparked me a little bit more. So doing some research back then, and which was tough because this is before the internet. This is 91. But I came to learn that there was one sailor who was killed while on duty on the Cod. There was a torpedo that was actually stuck in a torpedo tube, and it was about ready to go off when two sailors climbed up on the deck and was trying to open port latches to let smoke out of the Cod because they were being smoked to death while this torpedo's gonna go off inside this tube. Well, while up there, the two guys got washed off the deck by a wave. Two guys inside the Cod in the pitch black of smoke in the room, just going by feel, they couldn't see, managed to get the torpedo to launch out of the tube, and the Cod was saved, of course, with all of its sailors on board. The captain spent all night trying to locate the two sailors who had been washed overseas. Nobody could find them. And in the morning, when he was just about ready to give up and he was going to dive, one of the men was spotted floating in the water. So they pulled him out, and he told them that he had this guy's hand for quite a while. The other guy did not have a life jacket on. He did. The guy couldn't swim. You would think first rule of order is teaching your sailors how to swim, but suppose this guy couldn't swim, and he didn't have no life jacket on, and they got separated by a wave, and he couldn't get back to him before the guy sunk underneath the water and drowned. So today there's a belief that that particular sailor and his name is slipping my mind right now. I don't know why, but that he still resides on the USS Cod, watching over the ship and taking care of his fellow soldiers. So that was an interesting experience. That was one of my first, if not the first, seeing a shadowy figure, or actually I didn't, on that particular case it wasn't a shadow. I seen his whole thing, his whole uniform. From hats to shirt to bottoms, I seen the whole thing. But it was so fast. It was just like flink. I seen another person head on like that. I've only seen a couple. Most of it has always been like a shadowy figure out the corner of your eye or something. I saw Tim in detail, a former person that I worked for, sitting on a tow motor who had passed away, sitting on a tow motor watching me work in the middle of the night. I saw him. There's no doubt about it. That was Tim. And the lady, I was dating a woman who became my second wife, and she had step-grandparents who had a spirit living in their house in Lorain, Ohio. I saw her one time she was starting to come down the steps. There was an interior staircase that went up, turned, went up, turned, went up. This is a 4-story home. And I seen her one time coming down the steps for about 3/4 of one flight, and then she just kind of dissipated. And after that point, I used to refer to her as the lady in blue. She was wearing a blue dress, and the dress was from, say, the 1920s or something like that. But that was a full-blown, you actually see the color of the dress, and so forth and so forth. But it was fast. It was a second and a half, right? She came down like 4 steps on the landing of, I think those landings had 6 steps if I remember. She came down 4 of them and just dissipated in midair. So I've seen a few like that, but I've seen a lot more that's more of a shadowy figure, or you're not looking straight at it. These I'm looking straight at, right? Where usually they're kind of like this, and you see it, and when you turn, there's nothing there, right? That's what I've seen most of the time. I believe that's what most people see most of the time. But the Cod sailor, Tim on the tow motor, and the lady in blue was definitely, I seen them straight on looking back at me. And there's nothing that you can say or do to change my mind and convince me I didn't, because I absolutely did. But I just thought I'd share that with you this morning. That was episode 8, I believe, maybe 9. When I post them up on the YouTube, I always put what episode number it is. So until next time, take care.